Hi guys, Kevin here. I'm going to read you a few Sasquatch sightings from Illinois today. Illinois was number 2 in Sasquatch sightings in 2017, and depending on where you look, Illinois is always in the top 5. So these sightings were along the Illinois River corridor. There's other rivers that they seem to be following with reports of sightings. So let's get started. I'll read you what I got. This encounter took place in the countryside outside of Chillicothe, Illinois, near Peoria, in 2006. I saw, I guess you would call it, a toddler Bigfoot on my second of 2 encounters. I was wearing camouflage, sitting about 20 feet off the ground, deer hunting, when all of a sudden I heard something bipedal loudly walking through the woods. I believed it to be my cousin coming to hunt the stand I was in. I turned my head and upper body towards the noise. Much to my surprise, I saw an approximately 7.5 foot tall, around 500-pound hairy creature that froze in place looking at me. After a few seconds, it let out a large, loud huff noise. At this point, a smaller one, around 2 feet, hard to estimate the weight, stepped out from behind a tree and climbed onto the back of the larger one. It was quick and nimble and reminded me of a baby chimp climbing over its mother, only it was more human. After what seemed like minutes, but was probably only 40 seconds, the big one started to back away from me without ever taking its eyes off of me. The little one just clung there, looking straight away. Once this thing was around 30 yards from me, it was like it just vanished into thin air, the way it blended back into the woods. So that seems to be a common trend, is the vanishing into thin air. So I don't know if it disappeared into thin air or if it just blended back into the woods. Once this thing was around 30 yards from me, it was like it just vanished into thin air, the way it blended back into the woods. It's a good report. This was last fall. Clear weather, stars shining. Saturday night, I was driving at 10:30 p.m. in central Illinois, heading from Cass County towards Tazewell County. So this is where they crossed into Mason County on the Illinois River. And obviously, Chillicothe was on the Illinois River also from the last one. So the car was probably 3/4 of a mile ahead of me, and I could see their taillights. I saw a large animal jump into the road about 40 yards ahead. When it hit the road, I could see very large legs spread wide in a dead run with large swinging hairy arms. The arms switched back and forth close to the ground as its body was leaning forward. It leaped across the road in 2 jumps. When it hit the shoulder, it looked back at me. I said to myself out loud, "Effing Bigfoot." It was about 2 seconds before it vanished in the darkness altogether, but I could see it clearly. It was very large, and even though it was hunched over nearly horizontal, it still was close to being wider than my car and nearly to the top of my windshield. It blocked out the lights of the car ahead. It had shiny black hair. I could not see its eyes or mouth, but saw its head turn towards me before it jumped into the dark field. It was running and leaping very fast, nearly as fast as a white-tailed deer. Its gait and stride were huge. He was alone, but he had talked to his coworkers, and they said hunters, fishermen, and barge operators had multiple sightings in that area. And with reports of locals saying there's a clan of Bigfoot that live there, and they are not threatening to humans. We'll read this one. This one again was near Chillicothe. I was squirrel hunting about almost 15 years ago and was sitting on a log wearing camo head to toe. I heard something coming up the ridge toward me about 100 yards to my right. After spending most of my childhood and young adult life in the woods, I was confused because at this point I could only hear it moving and knew it was like nothing I had ever heard in the woods before. It finally came into view and was about 110 yards away from me. As I was confused as hell at that distance, I had no clue what I was looking at. I raised my rifle, a .22 caliber with a 10-round magazine, to look at it through my scope. No intentions to shoot it, just to look. What I saw was a humanoid creature approximately 7 feet tall and completely covered in black hair. It mainly walked upright, but at times it bent down and stopped and was picking up acorns off the ground, looking at them, and then eating some and throwing others away. I sat there stunned by what I was looking at. having a silent battle in my mind about what I was actually seeing. I have no idea how long I sat there watching it through my rifle scope when all of a sudden I became aware of a very heavy, musty smell that kind of snapped me out of it. And I realized at this point, whatever it was now only at the most 7 feet from me. Holy crap. That's close. And from me, due to my camo and the direction of the wind, I realized I had no clue I was sitting there. So I stood up and screamed, "Hey, get out of here," as I tore off my hat that my face mask was attached to and started waving my hat and rifle overhead. It stood up, looked at me, and let out a scream that made my blood run cold. That guttural yell we always hear about. I dropped my hat and took off running for my four-wheeler approximately 200 yards away. All I heard behind me was brush snapping and my own breathing. I fired my rifle blindly behind me and just kept running. Yes, I realize it's unsafe, but at the time it seemed rational. I made it about 75 yards and had to stop. I was out of breath and could not run anymore. I stopped and hid behind a tree and listened, but heard nothing. I peeked around the tree and did not see anything, so I slowly started to walk towards my four-wheeler. I never saw or heard anything else, but about 20 feet from my four-wheeler, I again smelled a very heavy, musky smell. And when I got back to my four-wheeler, I started it and then used my rifle scope to scan around, but I did not see anything. So I got on my four-wheeler and left, and I've hunted those same woods 15 years before this day and 10 years after this day. I have never heard, seen, or smelled anything before or after. To this day, I have no idea what I saw, but the only thing that makes sense was a Bigfoot. And I swear this is a true story, and I was not drunk. One more here. We'll read one more, and it's getting dark. Outside of Chillicothe, Illinois. Had one staring at me from the woods behind my house. Several other things also. It was not aggressive, but I followed my gut when I am in the woods and armed. I would not shoot one unless I had to. I have been bluff charged too. I stood my ground. It was close to dark, and it stopped just beyond the utility light. So when it reached the light of the yard, it stopped and stayed in the woods. There are several in that area and towards East Peoria. I've been seeing them for 60 years, and they do just disappear. Again, they just disappear. My whole family has seen them. All right, those are the only sightings I've received right now. Got some, well, I have some other old ones from Spoon River, from Spoon River Valley Corridor, which meets up with the Illinois River. I'm 2-3 miles from the river as the crow flies right now. So let's get these other stories and sightings and get them submitted. If you have any sightings, please submit them and we'll get them read. They need to be heard. You need to be heard. And this is a good platform to share them. So, have a good night. Until next time.